Welcome back to Next Shift with Rick Wagan, and we have our guest Stephen Cohen again, and we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens, who have finished off Game 31 of the season. Their current record is 12-16-3. They have 27 points. They currently stand in the second to last position in the Atlantic Division, and overall they're close to 28th in the league. The last time we spoke, the Montreal Canadiens were getting through a relatively rough time. They won a couple of games. Stephen was harsh a little bit on Martin St. Louis. We'll see if some of that changed from his perspective. All in all, what we've seen in the last 7 or 8 games since Patrick Laine rejoined the team after injury is a team that has gone 4-3. Which is pretty solid. They lost games in Washington. They lost a game in Winnipeg. And obviously they lost that terrible game against Pittsburgh. But they won against the Islanders. They won against the Ducks. They beat the teams that they're supposed to beat, and they did a good job, obviously, against Buffalo the other day with a 6-1 victory and a hat trick by Patrick Laine. The last time we spoke, we talked about the team. I think we were looking at the first line, the second lines. Let's just kind of talk who they are, and we'll kind of jump into the different where people are, where they progress, whether they progressed enough in your opinion, and we can go back and forth from that perspective. So I'll stop for a second. I'd love to take your take on kind of where you think the team is and how you want to have this conversation go.
So I'm not super pleased, and I'm not, I'm a little bit, I was expecting a little bit worse results than we're at, actually. Like the last show I was on, I had some dire predictions, which didn't come through. I'm pleased about that. I think the Canadiens are actually progressing quite nicely. Lane Hutson, Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Suzuki, Josh Anderson is having a good, decent season. Some of the defensemen are doing really well. I'm actually pleased with Xhekaj. He's looks like he's maturing a little bit, not taking a lot of stupid penalties. There are some players that I'm disappointed in. Actually, one more player that last couple of games I think has started to turn the corner, and I think it's something to take a look at over the next 10 games is Dach. While he didn't get a point last game, I thought he had a strong game over the last 2 games. He had a bad injury last season, coming off of an ACL tear. And it takes a while for you to build up the confidence and the stamina to be able to, to start producing as a two-way hockey player, which is what he really brings, the value that he brings to the table. So what are the disappointments? There are 2 players that I'm extremely disappointed in. So one is the backup goaltender, Primeau. I just don't understand how he's still on the team. I mentioned it before. They try to avoid using him. But we have a back-to-back coming up against Detroit. They're definitely going to have to use him again, which is really, it's going to be very, very disappointing, or not disappointing, but very interesting to see how he does and whatnot. And then the other player is Nehook. So Nehook is just absolutely lost and whatnot. He's not producing. He has some scoring chances, mind you, last game. Could put the puck in the net. I'm not sure what value the guy brings to the table. At this point, if you have an opportunity to trade him, I think that he would be a very good candidate to kind of, trade him for something else. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, so I mean, listen, I kind of have responses to the 2 players that you've kind of called out, if we want to go in that direction. I'm still not completely sold on Dach. He was just outstanding in the preseason before he got injured last year, and I was expecting him to be a portion of that player, and I haven't seen the two-way hockey player that you're talking about. I find he's way too much on the wrong side of the puck. He's fighting it, but he had, to your point, the last couple of games, definitely had a few rushes where he was carrying the puck, taking it in, making some nice plays, getting some shots towards the net. Still ended up with no points, but all in all, I'm not as disappointed as I was last week or last month. And that's all you can ask for right now, is just as long as he's progressing. So I'm not happy with him yet. I'm not there yet as far as you were, let's say, but I'm also not totally disappointed and given up on the kid. The other two players that you mentioned. Again, I think where we may differ a little bit, and again, I'm not defending Cayden Primeau. Cayden Primeau has pretty much proven that he's at least this year lost his confidence and is not playing the type of hockey that belongs in the NHL right now. The challenge the Canadiens have is that they do have a solid a goalie right now in Laval who's playing good hockey, although he actually is recently injured, which could be a factor of why he wasn't brought up, in Dobish. And then they have another goalie of Connor Hughes. And that team is actually playing some really good hockey, and it's getting better and better every week, and they're a top team in the league. And what you have to remember is having Dobish in the American Hockey League playing 50, 60 games as a first-string goalie might be more valuable to the Canadiens in the long run than having Dobish play 10 games in the NHL. And I think that's what I think we're seeing right now. And it's a combination of what I just said and that the fact that Dobish got hurt also in the last couple of weeks. Now, if he's supposed to play one of the next two games, I believe he actually might play Friday in Detroit. It's a back-to-back for both teams, so there's no disadvantage in a sense, and you're back home in Montreal where you hope to win the second game at a minimum. And they're looking to see if they can get, one of those games where he actually does perform. He did win a game. I think it was against the Islanders. He won a game 2 games ago. That wasn't too bad. He actually kept the team in the game. And so it is what it is, right? I'm not defending him. I don't think he is a long-term prospect for the Canadiens, but I think they're looking at it and saying, we have Fowler, we have Dobish. We want to develop Dobish. We don't know, we don't want to take that chances. And I know that we're on different pages here, but I think the Canadiens are looking at this year as a development year, and from their perspective, they feel like Dobish in the minor leagues is more valuable to the development of the Canadiens, and they're hoping that Primeau can turn it around, at least play some of the hockey he played last year, and maybe win half of his games. That's the goal. I'm not defending it. I'm like, and again, if he comes out and lets in 6 goals and is terrible again on Friday, I'll be calling.
So what do they do? So what do they do in that circumstance? Listen, odds are he's probably not going to perform. Odds are he's probably going to let in 5 or 6 goals, 7 goals. What happens? What do you do? What do you do if you're the Habs management? You have this train wreck of a goaltender, right? Not performing.
You bring in Dobish or Connor Hughes. I think that's what you have to do. So let's say he plays terrible. He's not going to play the next game, right? He's not going to play the game after that against Columbus on Tuesday or Monday, and then he's got a 4-day break, and they go to Florida. They don't have to play him. You know what I mean? Like the only time he'll see the ice is if they've given up 6 goals in the first 2 periods, like they did last time. He gives up 3 goals right away. So listen, we can go in circles on this. I'm not defending him. He's not going to be a long-term Canadian contending. But I think the team. Yeah. So let's talk about Nehook. So. Here's the problem with Nehook. Nehook is not a top 6 forward. Okay, I think if you look at Nehook,
let's not forget. I want to just bring one point up. I don't mean to interrupt you, but they traded him. They traded a first-round pick for him.
Right? I thought it was 2 seconds.
No. Look it up. It was a first-round pick. It may have been
like
a late first-round pick. It was a first-round pick and a prospect for literally a player who's never played better than the 4th line. What are they seeing in this player? Like, I don't understand the love affair with this guy as a prospect, giving up a first-round pick for him. You tell me.
What they did was they gave up a first and second round pick, a late first round pick and a second round pick. And what they're looking to get was a middle 6 center. They were hoping that that's what he was. I will say this. Nehook on a line with Laine and Dach, to me, brings at least a bit of energy. He is bringing energy to the ice. He's still, I think, without an assist this year, which I find unbelievable. There's, I think, 24 goalies that have assists at this point, and he doesn't have an assist. But end of the day, I feel like Nehook is not living up to his bargain. I mean, he did win the Stanley Cup, right? He was on the Stanley Cup team. He played on the second power play. He was on the third and fourth line of a Stanley Cup team with the Avalanche. And end of the day, they were hoping that, he's 23 years old. They were hoping he was going to develop into a top six forward. My take on it is he's not in the right seat. And that's what you have to look at. Like, when you have players playing in the top six when they should be a third line center or fourth line center, that's where he belongs, right? And I think they were hoping to see if he develops in a different way. I don't think he does. He does have a very solid shot. His goals are really nice when he puts the puck in the net. He's not a completely useless player. He's fast as well. He's just, again, for my take, he was in the wrong place. I don't think he should be on the top six forward line, and he won't be. And if you look at the Montreal Canadiens next year, right, you got Demidov coming in. You might have Michael Hage coming in. We'll see if Dach performs. You'll have Laine, Slafkovsky, Caulfield. This player is going to be a third line player at best. And let me finish that sentence. What would you think of a line with Nehook and Anderson and Gallagher? Would that not be an energy line that would help the team? No. All right.
No.
All right.
You
like Dvorak more than you like Dvorak?
I love the line that they have right now with Gallagher, Anderson, and Dvorak.
You like Dvorak?
Well, I don't like Dvorak, but I like the line.
Nehook and Dvorak. Who's a better player? Nehook and Dvorak. Who's a better player?
Well, Dvorak is probably better on faceoffs. Probably a more established player. If you're going to weigh, like, how much do they make, like what their salary is, all in all, I would like Nehook because I think he's a lower priced player with a little bit more upside. But all in all, if I look at the two players right now, I'd rather have Dvorak than Nehook. I mean, Nehook is just, think about it. He plays either on the first power play or the second power play. Not sure why he deserves it. He does not deserve to be on either. He is being given, think of all those opportunities to be given on a power play and not even get a secondary assist. It's pretty sad, actually.
So he does have 6 goals, though. 6 goals is nothing to sneeze
he scored,
at.
Like you mentioned to me, he scored 2 goals, I think, twice. And then he hasn't sniffed a score sheet.
He reminds me of somebody. I'll leave it at that. So that being said, maybe that guy. That's exactly what I was thinking. Maybe that's why when you put Josh Anderson on the third and fourth line, he becomes a very valuable player to your team. And maybe that's where this guy belongs, is what I'm trying to say. We'll see. At the end of the day, Nehook is a young player. Could still develop, and I think when he's in the right chair, whether it's the fourth line or third line, and this team, he will be there at one point. I think he might be worthwhile, but again, maybe he's worthwhile more in a trade. So listen, this is my take on the Montreal Canadiens. The Montreal Canadiens are a much better team with Patrik Laine, and they played if they would have played.
We haven't talked about Patrik Laine. Let's spend a few minutes talking about Laine and what he brings to the table. And that's another thing I forgot to bring up is, having a second scoring option like Laine and Caulfield, shooting from the same spot on the power play, same one-timer. What are your thoughts about that? And then what kind of value that brings to our Habs?
If you think about it, right, this is the best power play I've seen the Montreal Canadiens have in terms of a unit for as long as I remember, since maybe Markov and Subban.
Weber also.
And Weber, they had it, but they didn't have the weapons. The Canadiens have 2 guys that they have to. I would say even 3 guys, because Suzuki has an elite shot too. So they have Suzuki, they have Caulfield, and they have Laine. Each one of those guys can score 30 goals to 40 goals a year. And when you have that on the power play, and Slafkovsky's no slouch, he put 20 in at 19 years old. So when you have finally Lane Hutson on power play 1, which was, what we all waited for. And it just shows you just some of the subtle things he does to get the puck over to Suzuki, who then does his magic. And he just, he keeps the puck in. He makes the right play. It doesn't always have to be fancy, but he makes the right play, and he's just an outstanding passer. But Patrick Laine is proving to me, remember, he was second overall behind Matthews. That was his pick. He was picked at the same season as Austin Matthews, second overall, had a 40-plus goal season, a multiple great seasons in Winnipeg, and he has an elite shot. So I think this is a player that there's only one more year left on his contract after this year, but I think the Canadiens should be looking, let's give him a few more months and a few more games before we kind of jump on that bandwagon completely. But they should be looking to sign him for 3 to 5 years. He's only 26 years old, right? So that's a key factor to the piece.
So do you think, right, I agree with everything that you're saying. So he brings this added scoring punch that the Canadiens didn't have. He's going to make the first and second line better, because now you have Suzuki, you have Laine, and you have Caulfield. He's going to make at least 3 other players a lot better than they are today. So give them the 1-2 punch of getting those extra goals. And so do you think they can make a little push to contend for a playoff spot?
Well, let's do. Yes.
And we see that Laine is actually performing, which is a huge boost.
Well, how do I put this in a nice way? The Montreal Canadiens are playing Detroit twice, and then they play the Columbus Blue Jackets on Monday, and then they have a 4-day Christmas break. Okay, and then starting on Saturday, December 28th. They go to, let me rattle off their next 15 games, and you tell me how many you think they should win, okay? They go to Florida, then they go to Tampa, then they go to Vegas, then they go to January, and they go to Chicago, and then they go to the Avalanche, then they go to Vancouver, then they go to Washington, then they play Dallas at home, then they play Utah, then they play Dallas on the road, then they play Toronto, they play the Rangers, they play Tampa, they play the Red Wings, and then they play the Devils, and they play the Jets, and then they play Minnesota.
So a lot of good teams.
12 of those 15 teams are in the playoffs right now. Comfortably in the playoffs. So. Yeah. So out of those 12, and many of them are on the road. I'd say 75% are in the road. So they're going on the road for 75% of 15 games. So let's say 10 to 11 games on the road. And out of those 12, 15, those teams are, some of them are top of the league, right? So, and they're all solid teams. So it's my answer to you is, these next 3 games are very important, because they should need, if they can win their next 3 games, they're going to be 1 game under 500, and then they're going to go into this streak. If they can go 500, 8-7 in that 15 games, then I'll say this team could play. But again, I'm realistic. This team is not, in my opinion, a team that's destined to make the playoffs. But if they go into March and they go into that time of year and they're within 10 points, that's what the fans need to see. And more importantly to me is guys like Lane Hutson, guys like Patrick Laine now, guys like Dach and Slafkovsky, and obviously Caulfield and Suzuki and Gooley and Arbor Xhekaj. Those are the players I want to see playing well and continuing to progress. So if they're doing that and they're winning 50% of their games against those top teams, then I'd be happy at the end of the year with 85 points and out by 10 points. I'd be happy with that. I don't think it's realistic to believe this team has the talent to win 10 or 11 of those 15 games. I just think even if they played well against Winnipeg and they lost 4-2. And when you play well and you lose 4-2, you can't do much else, right? Like that's the point. And if you're looking at the Canadiens,
they ran into, in that game, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they ran into a crazy goalie. I think they had 3 or 4 breakaways.
Yeah, but I mean, Bobrovsky's pretty good, and Vasilevsky's pretty good, and the guy in Vegas, he's pretty good too, Aiden Hill, and then you go into Chicago, they're actually playing good hockey. You go to the Avalanche, they got 2 new goalies, and you go to Vancouver and they have Demko. It's good hockey teams you're playing, right? And so, end of the day, the Montreal Canadiens are playing better hockey. They had a horrible game 2 games ago against Pittsburgh.
That game frustrated me, Rick, so much because the thing that, listen, I'm okay with the rebuild. I'm even okay with Martin St. Louis. What's really frustrating me is when a team loses multiple games, like we played, 31 games this season, 32 games, something of that nature, and there's probably 5 or 6 losses that were like 9-2, 7-3, 8-1, 6-2, 6-1. These are absolute blowout losses. And that is just, like, you have maybe 1 or 2 in an entire season. But, like, to have 6 when you're, like, 30 games in, to me, that's a red flag that, like, something's either off with the system or off with the coaching. And that's why I've been complaining a lot about Martin St. Louis, because as a fan and as just as somebody who's knowledgeable about hockey, I played hockey, you played hockey, you know when you're down 7-1, and like I'm a player that wouldn't quit, but I really believe players quit on the coach in those games.
Well, let me kind of defend the team here. So you're right. The first 15 games of the year, the Montreal Canadiens lost 4 games or so by the score of 7-2, 6-3, those type of games. And what was apparent at the time, and what Martin St. Louis was continuing to articulate, was they were trying a system and the team was not really understanding it and executing it well. And he made it a priority for the team to figure it out, and I believe he did help the team figure it out. And after, I think they were 5-10, and you came on the show and said if they're gonna be 2-10 for the next 10 games, he should be fired, and they'll be 7-18 or something like that. And they turned out to be a lot better than 7-18 in that time frame. They actually were more than 500. They were kind of like 10-12 or something like that at that, but or 10. They got to some number that was reasonable. And what I'm trying to say is there's 2 different problems here. Number one, the 4 to 5 games that they were terrible, chalk that up to a young team trying to figure out a system. And I think they've gotten past that. Since that game, there's been kind of 2 bad losses. There was a loss in Boston where they kind of got beat up a little bit, and Boston came in hot because it was their 100-year game, and it was a tough loss. They probably didn't play their best hockey. And then when you talk about the 9-2 loss, in my opinion, there was a very weak goal on the 5th goal. It was 4-2 it was 3-2 after 2 periods. Okay, so if you're in a 3-2 game after 2 periods, you're in the game. And they weren't playing the best hockey, but they were in the game and they had a chance to win. And then they gave up a 4th goal and a 5th goal and a 6th goal. And basically, on the 7th, 8th, and 9th, that was a Primeau that came in, and he looked completely not ready to do it, right? So, end of the day, Cayden Primeau came in, and usually what happens, Steve, is when a team is down 6-2 and the coach pulls their goalie and puts in another goalie, usually the team is expecting it to shift gears, but what ended up happening was Cayden Primeau couldn't stop a beach ball that day, and that's what happened. So I look at it as a 6-2 loss, and then Primeau came in, and then the team didn't only not give up, it was just every shot went in. It was I don't think he saved a puck, and it's hard to stop that. Yeah. It's like you might as well pull your goalie.
I'm okay if that happens once, maybe twice, but it's happened.
It hasn't happened at all in the last 15 games, other than one time. That's the thing.
All right, let's see how this happens. We have a tough stretch. It's unacceptable. I don't care if you're playing the Boston Bruins, Tampa Bay Lightning.
No, I mean, they played well against Winnipeg.
You can't. This is not acceptable. As like, you cannot be a coach of a team that allows that to happen multiple times, 1 or 2 times.
And so since that happened, no, it hasn't. Okay, it happened a month and a half ago for one reason. He fixed that reason. This, I think, was an anomaly of a period. It was 60 minutes. 20 minutes of a period that just went haywire, and it happens sometimes. By the way, the best teams, Boston just lost 6-1 the other day. There's teams that lose by that score. The point I'm getting at is if this happens every 2 weeks or more, then I would come back and say I agree with you. But there's been 15 games where this hasn't happened except for one period, and it wasn't a 7 to like in the other games. If you remember, most of those goals happened in the first period. It was like within 5 minutes they were down 3-0 or 5-0, and it was like crazy. So anyway. Let's backtrack a little bit. So we've talked a lot of good about Hutson. Obviously, Laine's producing. Caulfield on the power play. I think you asked me a question there. I didn't really answer it. My comment will be that I believe that obviously you don't break what's working. So you got to have Laine where he is. But I think there's opportunity for Caulfield, because Caulfield has an elite shot, but his elite shot isn't always that one-timer. And if you do remember, he does play lower than Laine. He doesn't play as high up at the top of the circle.
Almost the same spot. Like
it's actually not. It's actually not. If you go look at his goals, a lot of those goals are passes over from Slafkovsky or lower. They're lower. They're down near the hash mark area, and so you can pull him out of the corner and have two guys on the right, or you can rotate him around and have him on the far right and in the bumper position. So what they're saying what they're saying in the room, at least right now, is it's working. Don't break what's not broken, but don't fix what's not broken. But what they're trying to do is find ways to get those players some opportunities and in different kinds of positions and shots. So I'm not worried about Cole Caulfield and whether he's going to score 30 goals or 40 goals now. Like, it doesn't matter to me as long as the Montreal Canadiens are winning hockey games and getting goals on the power play.
Agreed. Yeah.
And end of the day, he's going to be, he'll have his opportunities, and I'm not concerned. I'm actually really looking forward to next season when we have Demidov in the mix, because when Demidov plays with Laine, I think that's going to be magic. Like kind of how you see Hutson doing some things, you're going to have that on a line with Laine, and you're going to have two lines performing some incredible things. And in my take is, we had by the way, breaking news, we had a trade today. We had a trade.
Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we had a trade where Justin Barron was traded for Alexandre Carrier. Alexandre Carrier is a French-Canadian hockey player who plays for the Nashville Predators. He's played 5 or 6 seasons. He's 28 years old. He's a solid defenseman. I wouldn't say he moves the needle. He reminds me of a Kovacevic type of player, maybe a little smaller, but a little bit more talented, I would say, offensively. But what he brings to the table, I think, is two things. He's French-Canadian. I don't know what that means. And then the other thing is he has the experience. He's a veteran. So veteran defensemen tend to make fewer mistakes overall, unless it's Jeff Petrie. But I had to throw a Jeff Petrie joke in. But the veteran defenseman on the right side, they're hoping that he becomes a guy that can play for the next few seasons on the Montreal Canadiens as kind of a maybe a replacement to a Savard. Maybe he's not the same type of player exactly. He's not as big and slow, and maybe not as strong defensively. But he's a solid right shooting defenseman, not very tall, but solid. He has decent weight, etc. So I think, listen, Justin Barron was a bad trade. They traded Artemi Lehkonen, and they got him in a second round pick for him, and they were hoping Justin Barron would be, they
got schooled on that trade.
I mean, listen, the three trades, some of the trades that they made have not been that great. I mean, what I will say is they've done a great job of drafting, but their trades
they did well with Monahan. The Monahan trade they got.
Yeah, of course. The Monahan trade was good. But I mean, and I'm going to say it, but the Toffoli trade is still up for debate, because remember, that player is not in the same age group. He probably could help this team right now, but the team isn't looking to win like they were now. And they got a Heineman and they got a draft pick for him, and we'll see how it all kind of plays out. All in all, the best trade, if you want to look at it, was Kulak. They traded Kulak for a second round pick, and that second round pick turned out to be a young gentleman named Lane Hutson. So that would be a pretty good trade, in my opinion. So I would take Lane Hutson for Kulak any day. Yeah, no, listen, for my take on this, it's too new for me. I follow the Predators a little bit. He's a fourth or fifth defenseman on that team. Hopefully he brings experience and the skills that you need. I don't think the Canadiens are going to miss Justin Barron. I don't think he fits into the long-term plans. They have Mailloux, they have Reinbacher, they have already offensive defensemen and guys like Hutson and Mailloux. So you're looking for a player that can be a little bit more stable and a little less risky, and a guy that you can trust, right? And I think that's going to be helpful for the team.
What kind of signal does that send? Let's talk a little bit about that. So you have Barron, who's young, right? He's 23, 24. He can't be older than that, right?
Yeah, something like that.
And you have this 28-year-old defenseman who's in his prime, who doesn't seem more like maybe a number 5 or a number 4 or maybe a number 6, right? So are they trying to win now? I don't understand the point of the trade.
Yeah, so let me.
Is this a piece that they're looking to stabilize their defense now? I mean, don't get me wrong. I do believe that Barron has been a train wreck this season. So if you look, I use that word a lot, so I apologize. But let's look at all the defensemen on the team. Goulet, solid. Xhekaj, he's going to be here to stay, right? Savard, even though he's older, he brings something to the table because he blocks a lot of shots, logs a lot of minutes, and he brings the veteran leadership to the team. Matheson is Matheson. I mean, Matheson is, you got a number 1, 2, 3, or 4. He did good number 5 on a team. Lane Hutson, and I think Struble is better than Barrett. So I think not Lane Hutson. I think that Barron, he's made so many mistakes. The other day I was watching, he even though this is against the Sabres, I think he caught the puck right in front of the net. Like, what is this guy thinking? He just makes mistake after mistake after mistake.
So it's very simple, Steve. I hate to cut you off, but it's very simple, okay? The Montreal Canadiens have 5 left-handed defensemen and 2 right-handed defensemen. And in the Pittsburgh game when they lost 9-2, they had Struble playing on the right side with Arber Xhekaj. And Struble got schooled. And Goulet was trying to play right side as well. And he had a rough game as well. And since that game, if you remember after Pittsburgh, they've been playing Barron nonstop. And it's been 2 reasons probably. 1, they want to showcase him for a trade. 2, it's because they realize that their young defensemen are not going to be able to handle playing on the right side. And they only have Savard, and they put Matheson now there, he's doing okay. He's doing Matheson. He's playing with Hutson. And then they had Barron playing with Goulet. And the truth is that Barron was causing too many mistakes, like you're saying. And so what the message is pretty simple. We need another right-handed defenseman that can step in at the NHL and not cause these type of mistakes, so that our young defensemen could play on their left side.
Just curious, was Kovacevic a right-handed?
He was. I think they regret making that trade. But I think it's a regret.
The GM.
But again, there's variables there, right? Like that player was a waiver wire pickup.
Right-handed defenseman.
He wasn't 28. He's not even that old.
Even worse.
Well, because he wasn't as.
That can fit in. Right.
I'm not defending it. I'm not going to defend it, but.
But this is constant. Like now we got to start looking at Hugo, right? What is going on here with the GMs with getting rid of Kovacevic? Now that's exactly.
But the Canadiens are going to. So let's back up. The next 12 to 24 months, okay, I anticipate the Canadiens are going to start trading some of these players that they've been kind of sitting on, okay? So what does that mean? There's players like Engstrom. There's players like Struble. There's players like Xhekaj. I'm not saying they're going to trade him. There's players like Bogdan Koyunishov in Russia. There's players like Mashar. There's players like Roy. There's players like Beck. There's players like Kapanen.
Right.
A lot of players, right? And you only need 6 to 9 forwards that can play that offensive style of hockey that really some of these players are going to end up playing in. And on the defensive side, you only need 3 left-handed shot defensemen. So guys like Matheson, guys like Engstrom, guys like Struble are going to be on the block. Savard is going to be on the block. They're trying, but end of the day, I think what they were hoping for was Barron could play. And the other thing that the elephant in the room, to be honest, is that they were hoping that Reinbacher or Mailloux could play in the NHL this year, and that's why they traded Kovacevic. They were hoping Reinbacher or Mailloux, and they were leaning on Reinbacher because Reinbacher is a more defensive defenseman, and he tore his knee out, and he may not play for 2 more years. So they realized they traded Kovacevic in the hope of making a spot on the right side for one of those 2 right-handed defensemen, hoping whoever can show up. And one of them got hurt. The other one they felt would be better off in the minor leagues. I'm not defending it. I'm just telling you why they did it. And now what they're realizing is Barron can't play right side in the NHL. He's not the solid defenseman they need for this team right now. It's affecting the left side. And they need a right-handed defenseman, and they picked up this guy who is, I wouldn't call him a journeyman because he's been there in one team, but he's a kind of player that can play a lot like Kovacevic, right? Like, I know it's not so they're getting a Kovacevic-type player. He's not, it didn't, But
they traded Kovacevic to get a Kovacevic-like player back.
Well, again, they traded Kovacevic to make room for Reinbacher or Mailloux, in my opinion. And I think what happened was the injury caused a domino effect, and they were hoping that Gouli or Struble or somebody could play right side.
So when decisions like that are made and they go backwards, so now top 5 pick, right, who's probably not going to play in the NHL for 2 years and may not even sniff the NHL, is probably labeled as a bust in Reinbacher.
I disagree.
Right?
I disagree.
We'll see.
He's injured.
We'll see.
It's an injury. I don't agree with you on that statement. He's 19 years old. There's no bust at 19 years old. He hasn't played a game in the NHL. There's nothing to say he's a bust. I disagree. I think what you're going to have to understand about the Montreal Canadiens, which I've said over and over again, is they're still in a rebuild. They're year 3 of a rebuild, and the Montreal Canadiens are not making this trade to make themselves more to make themselves go in the mix right now. They're making this trade so they don't need Struble or Gouli or somebody like that to play on the right side just to win games. And they want a player that can come in and not make mistakes. And that's basically what they did. And they realized Justin Barron was not in the long-term plans anymore. He didn't pan out the way they thought he would, and they have 2 young defensemen in the right. 3, by the way, they have 3 young defensemen right side because Bogdan Koyunishov, the guy from Russia, who's a captain in the KHL right now and doing good things, and the Canadiens were just there in Russia. You have Mailloux, who's playing really good hockey and will be an NHL player, and then you have Reinbacher, who is a 5th overall pick, and they're going to give him every chance once he gets healthy to play in the NHL. Again, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm looking forward to seeing him play. I think it'll help the team. It probably puts a guy like Struble in the press box for a lot more often. I think it'll take an injury before you'll see Struble play a hockey game. He'll kind of sit next to Pez, and we'll see who they'll be like, where's Waldo, those 2, and we'll see if we'll ever see them on the ice other than in practice. But all right, anything else you want to talk about? I mean, big game on Friday.
Let's just talk quickly about the next couple of games. We have a back-to-back coming up. I wanted to actually bring up one more thing, one more little debate topic. So I was thinking of the backup goalie, Primeau. We talked a little bit about the disappointment in him, and yes, we're going to probably give him another chance this weekend. But there's another goalie on the. First of all, the Sabres are not a very good hockey team. Clearly, the Canadiens took care of business yesterday. 6-1, very good hockey game, but against a very bad hockey team. So there's a prospect goalie that also has lost his confidence, also was a 7th round pick. and he's a Montreal-born player, and I think he would be a very good fit on the Canadiens, whether he ends up being a backup or maybe even jumping into Benny for number one. What do you think it would take to get Devon Levi to get traded to the Montreal Canadiens? Now, let's just, before you answer, let me just lay out the groundwork here, right? The Sabres are a very bad team. I think they're desperate. I think that they're willing to make some moves. I don't think Devon Levi was a first-round pick. You know, he was a seventh-round pick, so it's not like he was a guaranteed prospect that was going to just, you know, guaranteed be a star goalie in the NHL. I think he's very equivalent to Cayden Primeau, even though Cayden Primeau is a little bit older, maybe 2 or 3 years older than him. And Cayden Primeau lost, like you said, lost his confidence. He's not even sent down, although he should be in the minors, right? Devon Levi's in the minors. Why not, like, I don't know, figure out some kind of compensation and trade to get Devon Levi and the Montreal Canadiens? What do you think?
So, listen, from my perspective, the Montreal Canadiens have a guy named Jacob Fowler in the mix that I think is going to be the next Martin Brodeur, personally. I could be wrong. I think that Devon Levi is a player that could help the Canadiens for sure. I remember, I think he had an outstanding World Junior. He has a 9... I'm looking at his stats right now.
So did Cayden Primeau.
He has a 918. He has a 918 goals against save percentage and a 2.86 goals against average in the minor leagues. I just think that the price is probably too high. To be honest, I think you'd have to give up Dach.
Why is the price too high? Like, I know we were debating this off air. And why do you think the price is too high?
The same reason why you want him. The same reason why you want him. He proved in college hockey, he proved in the World Juniors that he is an excellent goaltender, and the teams do not want to give up that type of potential. And so a team that has him in the farm system, who believes in him, all right, and the Montreal Canadiens at one point believed in Primeau, absolutely. I think that the Canadiens have given him ample opportunity at the NHL level. I don't think Devon Levi's had a quarter of the chance that Cayden Primeau has had at the NHL level. And one is 22 years old, the other one is 26 years old. So
how many games has Cayden Primeau played at the NHL level, and how many games has Devon Levi played? Rick, I think you're wrong there on your stats. I think that Devon Levi...
Devon Levi has played 31, 38 games in the NHL. 38 games.
And how many games has Primeau played? Primeau's played about the same?
No, I don't think so.
It's about 30, 40 games, not more than that. So I'm telling you, it's a lot more even trade than you think. And I'm not saying
okay. He's played 55 games. He has an 884.
Okay. 55 versus 31.
Yeah, but he has an 884 save percentage.
And Devon Levi's is under 9.900 as well. Look it up in the NHL. That's why they send him down.
Yeah, but it's barely. It's 896. There's a big difference between the two.
I know, but it's. I mean, like, my point is.
You're okay. So again, I'll say what I said when we talked about this offline. You're smoking drugs if you think you're going to get Devon Levi for Primeau. Primeau could be waived tomorrow and go to Laval. No one would touch him for free, and you want to get Devon Levi.
But it's funny that you were scared. But last year,
the reason last year was Primeau.
You said to me, no.
Primeau's father came from Philadelphia, and he played 2 games against Philadelphia and kicked their ass, and Philadelphia was having a hard time finding a goalie, and so Philadelphia would have picked him up for nothing. Absolutely. And that's what a waiver is, right? And that's the point.
Okay, I mean, listen, you're talking about the end of last year versus the beginning of this year. That's not a long time to cut bait on a prospect. So...
listen, they haven't cut bait on the prospect. The Montreal Canadiens have not cut bait. The fans have, and personally, I have. But that doesn't mean that that means they haven't.
I know I have. Wait, for the record, I've cut bait.
Yeah, of course you have. I mean, listen, he looks terrible out there, and the Canadians have enough goaltending prospects, and Montembeault's playing some good hockey. There's no reason why this player should be on the team long term. But I am not calling for his head to come off right now. I think the Montreal Canadiens are better served with Dobich playing in the minor leagues for the long term. I think Primeau can win some games. He hopefully will win on Friday or Saturday night, and then I think that the Montreal Canadiens can get 0 for him. You know, he can get waived and put down to Laval, and no one will touch him. And if they trade him, so be it. They'll get a 5th round, 7th round pick. That's what you get for a guy like that. He's not.
So what is the? Listen, I know I believe you're laboring this point. You really listen. Devin Levi was sent down to the minors. He's playing.
Well, he's sent down to the minors because they have a first. No, you're missing, Steve. Steve, you're missing the point. The same reason why Dobich is in the minors, and by the way, Primeau would be there too. He doesn't have to be waived to go to the minors. Okay, they sent him to the minors to play 50 games. They want him to get his ice time and get his opportunity to develop in a pro league. He's better served there than to play on the Buffalo Sabres as a backup, where he is losing his confidence and not playing well. By the way, Primeau would be better served going to Laval too. But the concern the Montreal Canadiens have is they would lose him. And I know it doesn't sound like anything, but remember, Laval has about 6 or 7 prospects that the Montreal Canadiens hope to make the NHL one day, with Beck and Roy and Mailloux and Engstrom, and even maybe Machard one day, and maybe some other players like Luke Tuck and Florian Xhekaj and other. They have a lot of players, and they want those guys to play meaningful games. And the AHL is a good league, and so they feel better developing a guy like Dobich there than bringing him up and trying to win half of his games, of his 10 or 15 games he's going to play. And that's that's the underlying factor. And I think at the end of the day, even next year, if Fowler's not ready, he should go to the minor leagues. And it's either Dobich, or they have to pick up an old goalie like a Jake Allen or like a Casey DeSmith, like they had for a minute, and they can put that guy in the back as a backup goalie, like a Reimer, or like whoever. They have him as a backup.
You didn't answer my question though. What would it take compensation-wise?
Or so Nehook and a second rounder.
What about Nehook and Primeau for
They don't want Primeau. They don't want Primeau. They have gold.
How do you know they don't want Primeau?
Because you can waive Primeau and they wouldn't take. You can put him on waivers and they wouldn't touch him. That's the point.
So you won't touch him, and they won't touch him. Why is he still in the NHL? Why is he not?
I explained to you why.
Why is he not an Amazon driver right now? I just don't get it.
Well, I mean, I think he can go back to Laval and play in Laval. I think that's where he'll probably end up going. But the problem is the Montreal Canadiens don't want to mess up what's good down there. That's the truth. They want to keep that team rolling, and they want that team to go to the playoffs and learn how to win. Same way you think it's important to win games at the NHL level. These guys are playing meaningful position games, and they want that to happen. So anyway, we're going in circles. So Friday night, I answered your question. Nobody. You don't have you. It would take at least a second round pick, or a Nehook and a second round pick, and or a prospect
I would trade a second round pick and Nehook right now for Devin Levi. Backup goalie, and
they don't need it though.
A Montreal kid.
They don't need it. Kid. They don't need a 22-year-old goalie. They have a 20-year-old goalie that's better than him, and they have Montembeault. Like, what do you need another goalie? They don't need it long term. They need a goalie. They need a goalie this year. They're not a 22-year-old goalie who's got an 8 something or less than that goals against average. They need a guy. They need the save percentage. They need a guy that like a Jake Allen. They traded the wrong guy, kind of thing. To be honest, like that's what they should have done. They should have kept Jake Allen, but Jake Allen had a higher pay salary, right? This salary is a lot cheaper to keep Primeau, and they were hoping he could play at least as good as he did last year, which wasn't terrible last year. I know you didn't love him, but it wasn't terrible last year. But he's lost all his confidence, and he looks like terrible out there. I agree, and I would love to see Dobich there for the team. But again, if that's the reason they start losing, if they lose if he gets blown out next game, he'll probably stay on the team only because there's so many games before a back-to-back. and then they basically will decide right after that, do we need this player? And I think that'll be a decision they're going to have to make. And they can bring up a Connor Hughes potentially, who's probably better than Caden Primeau, and play as a backup. That's what they'll probably end up doing. Right now, Dobish is hurt, and they have Connor Hughes, and they have this other guy, I forget his name, backing him up. That guy's good enough to back up Dobish, and you bring Connor Hughes up, and then you can keep Dobish in the minor leagues playing his 55 games, and the Canadians will have at least a goalie that maybe saves a puck for 10 of their games. All right, Friday night.
So let's go
in
2
Detroit.
minutes now. Just 2 minutes firepower. Like, what's your take
I
on
think the
the games
Montreal
coming up?
Canadiens are going to split the weekend. I think Montreal are going to win one game of two against Detroit. I just watched them play Philadelphia. They just beat Philadelphia 6-4, but it was an empty net goal. It was a good game. I don't find them good. I mean, Petrie and Charo are on defense. You just have to step around those guys. I can imagine we're going to kick their ass. But they have guys that can score like Larkin, and they still have, what's his name? Number 88. Oh, anyway. They have some solid players. So, long story short, I think they're going to split the next two games, and they're going to win against Columbus. So they'll win two of their next three games, which will put them a couple games under 500 going into the break. I think that if they do better than 2-1, I'd be surprised, but two, I think that'd be awesome. So if they go 2-0-1,
Right.
or they go 3-0. If they go less than 2-1, I'd be disappointed. So I think they have to win two of their next three games, and then after that, I'm less optimistic because it's a tough road ahead. But I think if they can get close to 7-8 in those 15 games, which would be good, to be honest, then I would be happy with that. And they'd be 3 games under 500 by end of January. And then their schedule should get a little easier, I hope. So I haven't really looked at February. There's a bit of a big break there with that 2-week break for the Four Nations Cup. So there's not that many games in February. I know they do their West Coast trip in February. So they go to Anaheim, and they go to Los Angeles, and they do that trip, which sometimes isn't that hard, but sometimes it is. So what about you?
All right. Well, my take is they win all three.
All right.
Actually,
Optimist.
so
Even with that coach? Even with Martin St. Louis as coach? Just kidding.
So I do think that Caden Primeau, I don't think he's stupid. I think he realizes that if he doesn't play well, this is his last chance. And I don't think anybody's going to invest in. There's so many prospects out there. And I think that this is his opportunity, like make or break it, and I think he's going to come through. So it's not playing against Boston. He's not playing against a tough team. I think there's an opportunity for him to, shine, play a good game, take the win in, and I think we take care of business in the other two, Columbus and Red Wings game 1. So.
I think they're actually going to play Primeau in the first game. That's my guess, but we'll see. Either way, I mean, yeah, I'm less optimistic about that game, but you never know. They played well last game against the Buffalo Sabres, and Caulfield's due to score, and Hutson is playing great hockey, and let's see how it rolls. I like the way they look in the last 7 games since they got Patrick Laine back, and I'm. Looking forward to the remainder of the season. I just don't think they're ready yet because of, like you said, there's guys like Nehook on the second line, and that's not a playoff team in my opinion. There's guys like I know you seem to like Dvorak, but I don't think he's the type of player that should be on.
I don't like Dvorak. I just think he's
Armia is too inconsistent for me. I will give you. I have to say one thing.
Compare Nehook to Dvorak. I hate them both.
All right, I want to say one thing. Josh Anderson is having a great hockey season. He's been the most consistent he's ever been as a Montreal Canadian. That being said, I am not a fan of Josh Anderson when the dude gets way too many breakaways and doesn't score. But he got a couple of goals the last couple of games, so kudos to him there. And he is playing some solid defense on the penalty
kill,
kill.
which is like number 5.
By the way, he is leading the league in penalties, in minor penalties, so that's a negative. But he comes in hard. He plays an aggressive game. Sometimes he gets his arms up, sometimes he gets his stick up, sometimes he trips a guy just with his size. So it's not all his fault. You don't want to change his. He plays with an edge when he plays hockey, but. I wouldn't change the way he's playing. If he can play as consistently, I would say this year in 31 games, I'd say maybe 3 games I thought he didn't play up to par, and he reminded me of last year 3 times. I think last year he reminded me out of 31 games 30 times. So he's playing a better kind of hockey, but he belongs in the third line, not in the first or second in the first power play.
Before we adjourn, I just want to call out kudos to Rick Wagan, who beat Steve Cohen in fantasy football in the quarterfinals.
It was the quarterfinals, yeah.
Quarterfinals. So he's moving on to the semifinals, and he plays Alexis Cohen.
Yep.
I blocked her semifinals this week.
I blocked her last. Yeah, you can ask her. I blocked her last night on her tight end. I know she needed a tight end, so I put all my money on the best tight end that was available. So I didn't even need a tight end, but it's how I play. I play dirty, so just let her know.
I'll let her know that you said that. Actually, I'm gonna save that clip and send it to her.
No, it's all, listen, it's all, what is it? It's all love and it's all fair in love and war. We love each other, but it's a game. We got to win. We got to win the game.
You got it. All right. Well,
all right. That being said, looking forward to the weekend. Thanks for joining me, Stephen. It's been a while. So, I'm glad they're not 8 or 7 and 20 and Martin.
No, I was wrong. Now I'm actually back on the bandwagon, and let's see.
The coach isn't bad, man. He might win the Jack Adams if they make the playoffs. But anyway, all right. That being said, that's it for Next Shift with Rick Wagan and Stephen Cohen. Suzuki does not suck. We'll talk to you guys soon.